All right, everybody. Do a little bit of nationalism here in our sprint to get done with the end of the year. In the Congress of Vienna, you may remember the Congress of Vienna began after Napoleon was defeated for the second and final time. And all the heads of state and royals in Europe met in Vienna for about 10 months. And when they do this, besides drinking and hunting and partying, they come up with four main goals. Number one is to create a lasting peace in Europe. The destruction and the warfare from the Napoleonic Wars just bankrupted many countries. It led to revolutions, so we need peace. Number two, create some sort of a balance of power. Napoleon scared everybody because the French army was just so much stronger than everybody else's. No one country can have a military that much bigger than everybody else. Number three is to protect the ancient system of monarchies. We've got to keep legitimate hereditary monarchs. We got to keep them back, put them back where they were removed. We can't have these republican governments, so these democracies. So a king's got to go back in France, a king has got to go back into Spain, a king has got to go back into Portugal, and we've got to stay strong everywhere else. And last but not least, to create what is known as the Concert of Europe, which will be a peacekeeping force. Think of like the UN a long time ago, dedicated to handling problems. Instead of going to war, we're going to use dialogue, we're going to use negotiation, we're going to use mediaries, and this is going to help out. It's going to keep peace, and it's going to carry us into the next era while preserving our traditions. And the problem is, this old feudal dynastic states are beginning to compete with industrial giants like Great Britain. They have leapt ahead of everyone else because they are unified and they have industrialized. So it's the Congress of Vienna versus industrialization. There was a need, if you really looked at it, a need to end the old feudal dynastic states that only governed a small, tiny region. France was too large a nation, and it had already been, united. All right, it's big, but like England, France is unified. They're big. They've got resources. They're okay, but it's everywhere else, like the Austrian Habsburg Empire, which is made up of a minority of Austrians. The German states, the different states of Italy. These countries were broken up into tiny little areas. They said there was a prince in what would be Germany for every day of the year, 360 of them. How, in these tiny fractured areas, can governments become unified and achieve economic efficiency? Well, the easiest way to do this is to come up with one giant unified nation, which supports and adds into the ideas of nationalism. All right, nationalism is going to be the key here. However, we have people like Austrian Prime Minister Clemens von Metternich. He wants to keep the old system of monarchies that ruled multiple regions over ethnic minorities. England and France know that an efficient government is necessary to run industry and this new worldwide commerce that has developed as a result of the Industrial Revolution. And while the concept of nationalism supports modern industrial economies, the Austrian Habsburg Empire, the German states, and Italy were against the idea of nationalism. And this leads us into the Crimean War. In 1856, the Concert of Europe is going to face its first challenge. Crimean War breaks out when Mother Russia attacks the Ottoman Empire. Once again, Mother Russia is looking for a warm water port. And they try to attack the Ottoman lands along the Black Sea and the Danube River, the old Crimean Peninsula where the plague starts, trying to get access to the Mediterranean Sea. Well, this is going to be a big problem. Many Christians go on pilgrimages to the Holy Land and different Christian shrines, which took them inside the territory of the Ottoman Empire. And while back in their day, when Mehmed and Suleiman were in charge, the Ottomans were equal, if not stronger than European monarchies. Because of the Industrial Revolution, they've fallen on hard times. And so, what's going to happen, because of these Christian pilgrimages, to defend their Christian countrymen from Russia, while they traveled through the Ottoman Empire, France and England will enter the war on the side of the Ottomans, all right? And so here is the Black Sea, here is the Crimean Peninsula, Constantinople and the Dardanelles into the Mediterranean Sea. Here is Austria, the Austrian Empire, here's the Ottomans, here's Mother Russia. Big problem is, they said it was about Christianity, but both England and France are seeing the Ottoman Empire decay. And they're going to jump in, but what they really want is some of the old crumbling Ottoman territory. They want access to the good stuff before anybody else, and the British are determined to keep Russia out of the Mediterranean. So the Crimean War pits Russia versus the Ottoman Empire, Great Britain, and France. And Russia was defeated. And this shatters the myth of the Great Russian Bear, which was unbeatable, something that came about in Russia's defeat of Napoleon. And so the three Allied countries, the Ottomans, France, and England, worked together for a speedy resolution. But if you really look at what happens, the Crimean War demonstrates that the concert of Europe, this idea of using our words in negotiation, is not able to prevent or solve conflict. It ignites the flame of nationalism. As in the Ottoman Empire and the Austrian Empire, there are tiny territories of like-minded people who are in a minority position. Serbs, Czechs, Slovaks, Yugoslavs, Bosnians, and they all want their own nations. And so we're first going to look here at Italy. The concept of nationalism in Italy is something that had been around for a long time. If nationalism makes sense, it's in Italy. They had been part of the Roman Empire, for God's sake. And they have all 5 factors needed to become a nation. And those 5 factors are, again, quickly, a group of people that speaks a common language. They have the same culture. I mean, they dress the same, primarily the same religion. They eat the same foods. They have the same customs, holidays, and rituals. They have a history that goes back over a long time, like all the way back to ancient Rome. And they have the same governments. And traditionally, these have been monarchies. So nationalism makes sense here. The problem is Italy has been split up into like 14 different states. Now geographically, unifying the Italian states into one massive country should be something that's pretty easily done. Geography dictates it. The long plains up and down either side of the Apennine Mountains. Everybody's got the same language, the traditions. These factors link Italy. It should give them the ability to modernize. But people look after their own regions first. It's very selfish. Like, we don't understand our role in the empire as a whole. UVA just won a national basketball championship because every player knew his role. Well, in Italy, that doesn't work. We look out for our region first. So everyone that had tried up to this point had failed. And part of the problem is the northern part of Italy is controlled by the massively powerful Austrian Habsburg or Austria-Hungarian Empire. And so there are two men, Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi, who wanted a modern democratic republican government where the people vote to elect their leaders. And they advocated using Italian military might to drive out Austria. But everyone says, man, we just don't have a chance. We really can't defeat Austria. They're just too strong. Here is Giuseppe Mazzini, and here is Giuseppe Garibaldi, the two Giuseppe unifiers. Well, just below the Austrian territory in Italy is the king of the small states of the island of Sardinia and the Piedmont. In 1852, their king, Victor Emmanuel, and his prime minister, Count Camillo Cavour, are buying into this. Now, Cavour, the prime minister, was a noble, but he saw how powerful modernization can be. He's seeing what was going on in England. And Cavour's goal is to gain more power for his king. The more power his king got, the more powerful Cavour got. So it's not all about unification, it's about gaining power. And Cavour is able to do whatever it takes to accomplish his goals. So Cavour felt that if Italy was unified and demonstrated that they were a modern industrial country trying to make a modern industrial economy, the great powers of Europe, namely France and England, would help them get their independence from Austria-Hungary. So the big thing is, how do we get rid of Austrian domination of Italy? He felt the only way he could do this was by getting help from France. So here's the king, Victor Emmanuel, and here is Count Camillo Cavour. And as luck would have it, there is a peace conference that is going to help calm the waters after the Crimean War. And Sardinia and the Piedmont sent some money and a few soldiers. They didn't have a lot, but they gave all they could, so they are invited to the peace conference. And as a result, France and Emperor Napoleon III, the guy who Cavour really wanted to schmooze, is going to be there. And even though they gave a minimal contribution to defeating Russia, they get a seat at the conference. So Cavour walks in and he starts working the room. Hey, I am Count Camillo Cavour from Italy. Ciao bello. Hey, oh, prego, grazie. And he brings a bottle of red wine. He brings a bottle of white wine, like the Billy Joel song, and he's schmoozing. He's working the room. And he knew that Napoleon III always came in late and made a grand entrance. And when he does, everybody's captivated by this little, prime minister from Sardinia and the Piedmont, and Napoleon III wants to know, like, who is this guy? And they sit down, they have a meeting, they cork their wine, they strike up a really good friendship, and Napoleon says, look, man, I'm going to tell you this in private. If you ever need help against Sardinia, or if Sardinia ever needs help against Austria, you let me know, we'll back you up. Kaboom! Cavour has done it. He's got a powerful ally in France. He has promised military aid as long as he doesn't start the war. So Cavour's next problem is, how does he provoke a war with Austria and make it look like their fault? Well, the war is going to start in April, around this time, 1859. And it becomes known as a summer war. That is a very quick 7-week war fought between the spring planting and the fall harvesting. As Piedmont troops are marching, they look like they're marching right for the Austrian border. At the last second, they turn and they veer off. But the Austrian Habsburg Empire says, man, they're really close to the border. They send their soldiers over the boundary and attack Sardinia on their own land. and Count Camille Cavour goes, "Help, help, help." So France jumps in to fight Austria, as does the German state of Prussia, which we're going to get to. And the Austrians, this powerful, formidable monarchy, loses. And as a result, they have to give up their territory in northern Italy. Encouraged by this big victory, other Italian states around Italy acknowledge this, and they want to surrender their territory and become part of Victor Emmanuel's new kingdom, greatly increasing his power. So Sardinia and the Piedmont was in purple. The two green parts were part of Austria. Now they join. And other areas around the Papal States and even in the south of Italy now want to join in. So, these other states are allowed to join as long as they acknowledge Victor Emmanuel as their king. The next big thing is, how do we achieve total unification? And after the unbelievable victory of the win against Austria, Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi say, okay, now is the time to strike for the total unification. They beg Emmanuel, come on, let's work with us. You and Cavour work with us to unify Italy. And so Cavour says, yeah. Now Mazzini is old and he is going to die off. So Garibaldi says, Cavour, you go down to southern Italy. You go down into Sicily and you start working from the south up. And so Cavour is given military aid, he's given weapons, and he's given transportation to the south. And Garibaldi's army is known as the Red Shirts, as they all wore blood red shirts. And as Garibaldi goes down, he attacks the kingdom of Sicily, and like lightning, he destroys the kingdom of Sicily and brings it into a unified Italy. Then he starts moving up the toe of the Italian boot. And Garibaldi's success is faster than anyone anticipated. Cavour was banking upon having time to find a way to orchestrate a way to unify Italy under the leadership of his king. But by the time Garibaldi reaches Naples, Cavour has to change course. And rather than work with Garibaldi, he sends out official Piedmont troops, the officially trained army, to stop him. Cavour wants to prevent the unification of Italy in the form of a republican democracy. So as Cavour's trained troops head to confront Garibaldi, Cavour's men capture the Papal States, the best land owned by the Pope, and take some of them. They've been controlled by the church for centuries. And when the army gets close to Naples, Garibaldi knows, even with the popular support, he cannot win against Cavour. His soldiers don't have the funding and the military backing and the weaponry that they have. So he will stand down and he will accept the rule of King Victor Emmanuel from Sardinia and the Piedmont. And in 1861, right at time the outbreak of the United States Civil War, King Victor Emmanuel is proclaimed the king of a unified Italy. It was the first time Italy had been united since the fall of the Roman Empire. It had been nearly 2,000 years, right? It has been 1,800, or well, actually 1,500 years since Italy, from 476 to 1861. And as awesome as that is, there are problems for this newly unified Italy. As much as they, want to, they're never able to achieve the economic efficiency that they wanted. They lacked many of the natural resources that they needed for a modern industrial economy. And as I said, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, local areas thought of themselves as individuals not being a team or part of one unified nation. So as try as they might, they can never achieve the level of efficiency they wanted. However, Italy is unified. A brand new nation is born. For the first time since the fall of Western Europe, Italy is unified. Even so, they can never match the power of the prime timers. They do have their own new country. So we're going to stop there for today.